This time on Rad Rat Video, we're going to learn the 360 flip, or the tray flip. Let's get started. Welcome to Rad Rat Video, the channel where you can learn something new about skateboarding 3 times a week. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we take a look at something in the skateboarding world, from skateboarding culture to games to your favorite pros and brands. And we also learn tricks here on the Shred School. And today, we're going to tackle the 360 flip, a trick that causes a lot of people a lot of problems. And before we get into it, it is a very difficult trick, so I want to make sure you are actually ready for this trick. The thing is, it seems like it's pretty simple. It's a varial kickflip with an extra spin. But although from a technique perspective, that's right, the trick is hard. So you want to have a lot of other tricks down pat. You want to be comfortable doing a lot of stuff in motion, rolling, landing clean, no matter what those tricks are. It's just a general comfort on your board type of thing that I want to focus on. So if you can do no comply frontside big spin flips, I teach those right here. If you can do backside big spins or impossibles even, which I think are a bit easier than this. If you can do any of that stuff and you can do it really clean and you feel good about where you are on your board and you feel comfortable with your foot positioning and all that kind of stuff, that is also very important. So a problem a lot of people have, something I did too, I was, a couple months after learning a kickflip, I'm trying 360 flips and I'm just torturing myself, trying it over and over and over and getting nowhere close. Even though I had the ingredients, I wasn't really ready. Okay, so keep that in mind. If this trick is just not working for you, step back, learn some other stuff, just enjoy yourself skateboarding more, and then come back to this a little bit later, all right? If you're ready and you're still here with me, let's get started with the trick. And I want to talk about the foot positioning. And we'll get into troubleshooting at the end, and you'll see how moving your feet around will have different effects. But just as a basic starting position, I would have my back foot right about here. This is called the pocket of the tail if you're new to skateboarding, and you want to be able to have a nice scoop. If you don't know that term either, I'll show you the difference. This is a pop, and this is a scoop. So it sounds different and acts different. The way that it affects the board is going to be a little bit different. With the 360 flip, you're looking for a little bit of a balance between a scoop and a pop, which can be a little bit complicated. We'll get into all that coming up. The front foot, I would take your normal kickflip foot position and move it back a little bit. Keep it as far forward as you can. It's easier to get the flip the further back you get. You see people doing them when they're first learning, like way back here, front foot almost touching the back bolts. And you can make the board spin and flip like crazy back there, but it's a lot harder to keep it with you and actually land on the board, which is the important part. I can make the board do a 720 triple flip. That doesn't mean that I can do that trick. It lands like 20 feet away. So what you want to do is keep your foot as far forward as you can, but it's probably going to be a little bit further back than normal. So right around the center of the board. The amount on the board and off, I'll talk about a little bit later. That's going to be kind of a troubleshooting thing. One thing about this trick is that it all balances out. If you aren't getting enough spin, that might be the way that you're flicking it. If it's flipping too much, that might be because of the way that you're scooping it. It's really weird. It takes a lot of different balance to get all of the variables in line and get the trick to actually work. So we'll get into all of that. But let's try the trick. So what you want to do is try to keep your shoulders square to the board. You hear that a lot. People always say that. But with this one, it's really important. I have the bad habit of kind of watching forward, like facing forward when I do tricks. And that makes a lot of stuff harder. If I try to ollie land in a nose manual, I'll typically spin a tiny bit in the air and then I have to land and kind of wobble it back. If you do that, try to make an effort to keep your shoulders straight the direction that you're going parallel to your board. With this one, it's very important. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And then let's start the trick. So what you want to do is pop it down and think about getting your foot over here, sort of in the middle of the board and behind it. You think about just drawing a circle in the air and throwing your foot that way. That's going to help. What you might be tempted to do if it's not spinning enough or if it's flying away from you, you might try to scoop the board way out this way. The problem with that is that you'll be off balance in the air. You'll scoop the board way out ahead. Your front foot is flicked out, your back foot is scooped out, and then you try to come down and land on the board and you got to throw them back and then you're off balance and you shoot out and everything. So try to stay a little bit more balanced. Try to keep your foot position more controlled. Scoop it this way and just try to put a little bit of pop into it. If you let the board stay too flat, if you just do it like a shove it, a non-popped shove it, just like a regular shove it, what will happen is the board will pivot around the back truck. And if you're centered above the board and the board's pivoting around the back truck, it's getting further away from you. So we'll find out some ways to help that when we get to the troubleshooting, but keeping the tail, keeping your foot position more poppy, more of a way to get just the tail to touch and scoop without the wheels, that's gonna get you in the right position. So pop it, scoop it around, pull your foot over around here. The front foot flick is actually pretty simple compared to when you learned your kick flips or anything like that. It's actually a little bit easier. It's hard to mess up the flick. We'll talk about what happens if that does happen, but the flick is going to be more forward than off to the side like you would normally do. Reason being, the board's spinning. So you don't have to flick this way. You flick straight forward, maybe even a little bit this way, and it'll glance off the board just fine. One thing about this trick is that it's very balanced. Having one spin and one flip, it really works together in a good way. And we'll talk about how all that works in a little bit. So if it all went well, the board's gonna come around and hopefully you will land it. What you'll hear a lot as you get better with the trick is that you should catch it with your front foot and then land it like that. Some people, it's kind of dying out a little bit, but it was the big style at the time to try to land it one-footed, like catch it with your front foot, land it, and then put your back foot on. But that's just a style issue. We're just gonna get you to the point where you can land the trick, and then you can worry about what direction you're gonna take it from a style standpoint. But let's get into the troubleshooting. There are a couple big issues that you might run into. I still have some of these happen from time to time. First one is the board flips too much. So like I was saying, the trick balances itself out. If it's out of balance, what'll happen is the board will flip like 2 or 3 times and it'll land way over here. And what you want to do there is tweak your front foot position. Not necessarily the motion or the flick, what you do with your ankle. You just want to move your foot around a little bit. What's happening most likely is your foot is too centered in the board for the angle that you're using. If you hang it off the side slightly more, it'll glance off the side better. What's happening is you're starting to pop the board and then you're just pushing it forward, which will help you to a degree with the next thing, but you want to make sure that you've got that balanced out. So you're not actually flicking it too hard. It's just that the board is grabbing your foot too hard. So work on your foot position, maybe work on the angle of it to get to a point where your foot just barely glances off the board and helps it out. That's one of the big things. The second thing is landing with your body turned front side. Happens to me from time to time. I did one back yesterday when I was filming these, where I did the trick. I'm in the air, my feet are bolts distance apart, and they're right next to each other, but I didn't land like this, I landed like this. So my back toe was off, my front heel was off, because the thing is, you're scooping the board backside, and you're doing it pretty hard, so you're pushing off the board and your body ends up going front side. That's why it's important to try to keep your shoulders square to the board when you're doing this one, but that might not be enough because you do generate some front side momentum when you're starting. So when I first learned this trick, one thing I had to do was actually wind up to it. I would do it like a backside flip. I would start like this, I'm about to do the trick, I would wind up and then do the 360 flip. And hopefully you won't have to do that forever. You'll get a little bit more comfortable with it. But that was one thing that really helped me when I learned it. And still to this day, a lot of times I'll land it and I'll have to nose pivot. I'll be a little bit off balance and I'll have to go front side because I have to fight with what my shoulders are trying to do. The way that the pros deal with it, which will be a little bit in the future for you, is to pop it more end over end. Because if the board is spinning like this, it's not going to make you turn front side. It's going to make you turn a little bit this way, but barely at all because you got your whole height. So that's what you would do as you get better with it, as you get more height into it and all that kind of stuff. But for now, just pay attention to your shoulders, pay attention to the angle that you're going. The next problem, and probably the biggest one, the thing that you're going to struggle with for a long time, is doing the trick and landing like this. You're landing on the tip of the nose, landing with the board slightly behind you. It's going to happen a lot. It's going to be very, very frustrating. And I wish there was a secret that would help you get past it immediately, but there's a lot of different things you might have to worry about. So the first thing I'll tell you is how not to fix it, which is the way I used to do it. So I would start with my weight like this, way forward, and then I would lean back, and I would throw the board way out ahead of me as I did the trick. And so I'm like this, the board goes behind me, but since my weight is back, I land it. But I'm really off balance. If I tried to do it higher and catch it, if I tried to do it over or down something, anything like that, that would be wrong because I wouldn't be balanced right and I wouldn't be able to land it clean. It works, it'll work on flat, it'll get you by for a while, but you really don't want to do it that way. But I'll tell you what you should do is worry about your front foot. So the first thing I was talking about was if the board flips too much and it flies out ahead of you, that's because it's grabbing your foot too much. Well, you want to balance that out. You do want it to grab your front foot somewhat. That way you can pop it straight, you can stay balanced in the air. Instead of the board starting to get behind you, you push it out ahead of you, it balances out, stays right beneath you. So this trick, it really does itself a lot of favors. You know, if you were to do a 360 pop shove it, no front foot action at all, it's completely into your scoop and your balance to keep it with you. But with this trick, you have your front foot to be able to push it out ahead. So the way that you work on that is to balance out your front foot position and the angle of it. It's just like having it thrown out, too far ahead of you. You want to tame it a little bit. With this, you want to do a little bit more. You push it back in a little bit more, centered in the middle of the board, more grabby as you go through. And finding that exact position that works for you is going to be very tough because you might find that it flips a little bit too much, but that might be the way that you scoop it. There's a lot of different things here. You've got to balance them all out to get it to work. But that's the biggest thing to do is to throw it ahead as you flick it, and hopefully it'll stay with you. The way the pros do it, again, is just like how they solve the other problems by popping it more end over end. That way it's not grabbing the wheels, it's not throwing itself behind you too much. It just pops and goes forward like that. So at some point that'll be how you do it, but that is not going to be for a long time. So if you got your balance right, you got the flick angle and the direction right, you are going to be in good shape. But there's still a lot of other issues you'll have. You might not get enough of a spin on the trick. You might land it sideways every time. And that might be another symptom of having your shoulders not be right. I would actually wind up a little bit. You might not see your friends do that. You might not see the really good guy at the park who does them all the time do that, but it's a way to help you learn it. You might want to do that, wind up like a backside flip and just throw it. Give it everything you've got. You'll get the technique down a little bit better. I think about that with switch, even at this point. I've been doing 360 flips for like 15 years or something like that. And switch, it's like, I have to throw it as hard as I can. It's not harder, it's just the technique isn't refined yet. So it is going to be a lot of effort at first, and if it helps you to throw your shoulders into it, go ahead and do that. But if at this point you've tried all of this stuff, you've done all those techniques, you've adjusted your foot position in a million different ways, and it's just not working at all, there are a couple other things you can do. First is trying to do it fakey. This is what I used to do all the time. The reason I didn't suggest this in the first place is because it's not going to help you that much with doing it forward. It'll give you some more confidence. It'll help you feel more comfortable with having the board do the right flip in the air and landing on it and everything. And the reason why it helps is because if you're going this way and you pop the tail, the board can go behind you and you'll just be going in that direction anyway, and you catch up with it in the air. Makes it a lot easier. And that's cool, but again, it doesn't help you solve that problem in the first place. If you can do fakey 360 flips, you're not going to get better at normal 360 flips, but it will get you comfortable with the balance of the trick, the way that the spin and the flip looks in the air. It will help, but I wouldn't spend a ton of time doing that unless you just want to learn fakey 360 flips and stop, then that's fine too. The next thing is to actually do it stationary. This is how I learned the trick, and I don't recommend the way I learned the trick because I didn't know what I was doing. But the reason why that's a problem is that you might be set up, you pop the trick and you land it and you feel like you can do the trick, but you didn't notice that you landed over here. And you can't roll forward and jump backward and land on it. It doesn't work. You might be able to do that, but then you land stopped. You put all your forward momentum into your wheels as you went. So those are more of a last resort kind of thing to help get used to the technique. If you're not as comfortable with your flicks yet, you haven't done a lot of scoopy tricks, and you just have to figure out how to get the board to do the trick at all, that's when I would go for stationary and fakie. If it's just problems with staying above it and landing it, then just stick with going forward and work through some of those steps I talked about. Okay, I really hope that helps. If you are still having a ton of trouble, just take a break from it, do some other stuff, get a little bit more comfortable on your board in general before trying this one again. So that said, here are some of the ones that I filmed. Hopefully that helps you get a little bit more perspective on how the trick works. Go out there and give them a try. Be patient with it and try to stay balanced and focused on it, and hopefully you will get it pretty soon. And after you do, here are some more videos that you might want to check out. I've taught a lot of other tricks on the Shred School here, and I do have videos about a ton of different skateboarding topics as well. So check those out, and make sure while you're here to hit my logo on screen to subscribe so you can keep learning new things about skateboarding 3 times a week. Thank you for watching.